Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to talk all about watercolor paints. Hi guys, today we're going to talk about paints and find all the ins and outs about paints. So there's artist grade paints versus student paints, okay? Winsor & Newton have their own line of student grade paints called Cotman. So the difference is that the student grades, of course, will be cheaper, but along with them being cheaper, over time they will fade. Along with the pigments, they're added filler, so they're going to be more chalky in appearance. They're great to start off with just to see if you like it. But if you have dabbled in watercolor and you're getting serious and you want to upgrade to the professional series, artist grade watercolors, yes, they are going to be more expensive, but the light fastness will be better. They're not filled with a ton of fillers, so the colors will be more vibrant. They won't be chalky. And you can always start off with smaller tubes. The second thing that we need to know how to do is to actually read the labels and know what things mean. Looking just on the front of these, you know, it does say the professional grade, and some of them will say Series 1, Series 2. So the Series 1 means that it is going to be the least expensive pigment. So actually harvesting this chemical, this pigment in nature, you know, isn't that expensive to do, and they're able to sell Series 1 colors a lot cheaper than the Series 2, 3, 4, etc. Then we have to turn it over. Reading the back, you'll see this clear box. That means that this color is transparent. And then it's also going to give you the pigment number. So it says pigment, P is for pigment, R is for red, and then it says 101. Okay, so that's the actual color. Even though it is called burnt sienna is made with pigment red 101. And then it'll have your light fastness rating, which is 1, which is excellent. Okay, so that's Winsor & Newton. I really like their little charts. They're very easy to figure out and read. And there'll be a lot more information online. It'll tell you whether or not the pigments are staining versus non-staining. We're talking about how easily the paint will lift off the paper. There are colors that easily lift, then there are colors that don't. And then you have some that granulate versus no granulation. Granulating is when the pigments actually come out of the suspension and you will get this like pixel-like effect. I have an example to show you guys. This background I did with a granulating blue, so it's not smooth. It has this very pixel-like effect. Non-granulating, you will get a smooth wash. This is another example of non-granulating pigments, and you get this really nice smooth wash. So I think the best thing that you could do for yourself as an artist or for a beginner is to make watercolor cards. And I do have information, so click up here and make sure you watch that one later too. Another thing I want to talk about is binders versus no binders. The only watercolor paint that I know of that doesn't use binders is Holbein. All the other watercolors out there use oxgall to improve the fluidity of how the paint reacts with water, which means it's going to disperse faster. And being a beginner, I think they're the best way to start off because you can control that pigment a lot easier. I would suggest getting 6 colors, all your primary colors, all 6 of them in the warm and cools. Now, what do we mean by warm and cool primary? So these are the warm ones, okay? This is a little bit of, ooh, that's gonna be a lot of paint. This is Indian Yellow. I have Scarlet Lake, and I also have Ultramarine Blue. So with a little bit of water, I'll show you the true color here. So warm colors are going to pull on the warm side, meaning they're going to have undertones of your warm colors pulling closer to the reds and oranges. So that's the warm side. Now this is the cool side. I have Winsor Lemon, Quin Red, and Phthalo Blue. It's a very bright yellow, but it's kind of cool. It doesn't have a whole lot of orange in it, whereas this one's much more warmer. This is your Quin Red. That definitely has undertones more on the cooler side, going towards your purples and blues, whereas this one here, hopefully you guys could see the difference. This pulls red. Phthalo Blue definitely pulls towards your cooler greens. So try to stick to translucent colors. I think another two colors that would be great to pick up and be useful is a burnt sienna with the blues. Make wonderful, fantastic grays. It's a very pretty kind of reddish brown. It's used a lot in landscapes and pet portraits too. And then neutral tints. This is great, as the name implies. It's pretty neutral. It's a neutral gray. And it's just kind of right there in the middle. And this is a great color to mix with any of your primaries in order to get a darker version for shading purposes or for shadows. Now, as far as tubes versus pans, that's the big question. So obviously, if you're just using the tubes, then on top of buying this, you're gonna have to buy some sort of palette. But honest to goodness, palettes are cheap. Don't buy palettes that just have these little round holes. I know there's some that are like almost in a plate and have little dips and have no other flat areas to mix colors. So stay away from that. You could get the Well one with a combination of the flat areas. These are super cheap. It's just plastic. I do have to say that I do love working with ceramic palettes. They are, of course, more expensive, but they're nice and hardy, stain resistant, and when you're mixing your colors, the color doesn't bead up, so you could kind of see that true color of what's actually going to go on your paper. Whereas you notice how this is kind of beads up. These ones don't do that. And you can also buy, which I love for traveling, is just an empty palette. Okay, you pop them all in. They're not full of paint when you get them. They're just empty, like these. You can just take all your colors that you have and just plop them in there, and this will last a really long time. So this is pretty much what I travel with. And then if you have all these flat areas that you could mix your paints on. These are dried, but they're still very kind of soft and pliable, and it doesn't take a whole lot of scrubbing with the water to really get a nice paste going. Whereas that's one thing I don't like about the pans, okay? These little cakes, they have different binding agents. It does take a little bit of scrubbing to get a nice paste going. I would suggest, if you are going to get pan paints, that you do the mixing of the colors with a cheap brush, okay? Because it will wear and tear on your brush doing a lot of mixing. Also, I do find that these colors are not as vibrant as these colors. I think that these go on a lot more vibrant than this one does. So in conclusion, if you want to step up your watercolor game, I would get artist grade watercolors and start with a small palette of just your warm primaries and your cool primaries. And I do believe that the tube colors are a lot more brilliant than getting the pancakes. Thanks for joining me today. See you guys next week.